All right, so finishing off our first day, we've got someone very special. She started a kombucha company out of her home several years ago, and they still make it using the same small batch processes today. And she's since grown the company to be in over 12,000 stores. They make all of their juice on Goodnature machines. They do things the right way. My friend, Daina Trout.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. So what a day. In case you haven't seen Health-Ade, this is what it is. I'm going to put it here. It's empty because I drank it. All right. So nice to see you. I'm sorry on the circumstances about the fire, but glad to see that you are all here and unaffected enough to be here. Cool. So today I've been asked to tell my story to fellow manufacturers, to fellow brands who are in my spot or have been, or I was in your spot. And so I've titled this story Project Growth because that's exactly what it's been the last 6 years as I've been on my labor of love, my journey of building America's next big soda. So it all started in 2012. My best friend, Vanessa, my husband, Justin, and I were all working for corporate America and feeling unfulfilled. And so we started an entrepreneur club to figure out what this business that we wanted to start was going to be. And we had all kinds of ideas. I really was the only one that was super passionate about food. My background is in nutrition. I went to graduate school 10 years before this, and I studied food, and I fell in love with food. And I got into cooking and healing with food, and I got into fermenting foods. That was where I learned how to make kombucha, also kimchi, kefir, and all kinds of good sauerkraut. And I had no idea that it was going to be my identity 15 years later. So back to Entrepreneur Club. Justin, my husband / co-founder, goes to get his hair cut. Normal day. Haircut, though, doesn't turn out so well. The hairdresser tells him it's his last hurrah, and he's going to be bald by the end of the year. Bad genetics, who knows? Either way, he's 28, not ready for this, super disappointed, comes to the Entrepreneur Club, and he's like, how do we stop this? So we felt we had a challenge. So we started researching what would regrow hair. And what we find on the internet are tons of anecdotal stories all over the world of people that use the kombucha SCOBY. Anybody know what that is? Okay, it's the culture that's used to make kombucha, and then it's also the culture that is a byproduct of making kombucha. So anyway, it's like a pancake matrix cellulose thing, and people use it on their head as a mask, and it apparently regrows your hair. So we're like, this is awesome because I know how to make these SCOBYs, because to make a SCOBY, you have to make a batch of kombucha. And remember my history. And it's pretty cheap to make this at home. It's sugar, tea, water, and we only had about $600 to start a business. So we were like, let's do this. So we were gonna be billionaire hair loss prevention artists through kombucha SCOBYs. You're starting to see how crazy we are, right? Okay, so we start brewing kombucha, a lot of it, but not for the liquid, for the culture. And our goal was to cultivate enough of these things that we could ultimately use them on Justin's head as a guinea pig and then sell them to the world. Okay, so then we're doing this project. We're like 3-4 weeks in. We've got about 60 cases of kombucha that's useless to us. And it's taking over my tiny LA apartment. And we're like mad scientists, nervous about these SCOBYs, making sure they're happy. And we get a phone call from a friend of a friend who ran the Brentwood Farmers Market. And there was like an 18-month wait for the Brentwood Farmers Market at this time. So they were like, hey, we want you to sell your hair loss product. It starts in 2 weeks, and you've got the summer. It's the center spot. And we're like, yes, click. Shit, we don't have a product. But so we were like, that's okay. We got the SCOBYs. That's the hard part. So we start like mashing up avocados and like mixing it with the SCOBYs. Anyway, in about an afternoon, we realized that's probably not going to work, and we're not going to be ready for this farmer's market. And kind of like a scene from a movie, we like look over to the wall to the 60 cases of unlabeled kombucha, and we're like, that's what we're fucking selling, So we show up at the farmer's market. 2 weeks later, the name, the bottle, it was scotch taped on. the label, Health-Ade, the anchor. It was all made on a weekend table. And we showed up and sold our hearts out. And we sold out in about an hour. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Thank you. And then we were like, maybe that's a fluke. A week later, it was the same thing. And so that summer had a very different ending than we expected. We went in thinking this was going to be just a summer project where we were going to take whatever money we got from this summer project and put it toward the hair loss project. And at the end of the summer, we realized the world, or at least Brentwood, wanted a better tasting and higher quality kombucha. They wanted Health-Ade. So we pivoted quickly, quit our jobs, and did that. So that's kind of the story that not many people hear, the hair loss to Health-Ade story, but I figure it's a good one to tell people starting out, some people that are starting out. So since then, it has not been a walk in the park. I think our brand book says, and the rest was history, but it really wasn't. It's been my life. And, it started with being evicted from your apartment because turns out you can't brew a brewery in your apartment. You can't run an entire manufacturing operations out of your apartment. Who knew? So I'll tell you the story since 2013. So that the first farmer's market was March of 2012. So about 6 and change years ago. But we really think the business started in 2013 because that first year was all farmers markets. Okay, so 2013 to 2018, and I'll go through a little bit of our growth. Usually in talks like this, when I'm speaking with consumers, I don't go through this stuff because it's not that interesting to them. But I figured since you all are manufacturing and you all are building brands, and actually on the operating side of it, it could be helpful to know how we've scaled. Brewery, number of employees, number of distributors, how we got our funding, and how that's looked over the last 6 years. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this slide. So first, brewery, minus the apartment closet. The first brewery we had was a tiny 1,000 square foot space. It was all we could afford, and it didn't last us very long. I would say about 12 to 15 months, but it was absolutely our first necessary step, and that was our first year. About a year and a half later, we moved into a 7,000 square foot space, and that took us a few months to build. I want to say about 6 months to build out, and it cost a couple $1 million in terms of equipment. So that was a really big deal for us at the time. We were in that place comfortably for 2 years, but we lived there for 3. So that third year was not comfortable. We were actually maxed out the whole year. So we were making 40,000 cases a month of kombucha. We couldn't make 1 case more. So our 2016 year was totally maxed out the whole year. Some people would say it was a good problem to have because you're sold out all the time, but it's actually not a great problem to have because you're managing all of the customers that want to buy more and you having to say no, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, maxing out a brewery or a manufacturing site isn't ideal either. During that year, we were building the brewery we live in now, the third brewery, our 50,000 square foot space in Torrance. It was a dream to move into this thing. It took 15 months to build and $15 million to build. And I only say that because I think it's important to know the amount of capital it takes. And kombucha is different than juice, but there is capital involved. And you have to think about that as you want to grow, and especially if you want to grow fast. So we've been in that place now the last 3 years, not quite 2 years. We moved in the very end of 2016, so all of 2017 and all of 2018. We've been there, and we're running out of space, so we're looking to build our next space, probably in New York, which is pretty cool. So the last 6 years have been basically 3 breweries and almost a 4th. In terms of number of stores, we started in 7 stores in the farmer's market year, and we were self-distributing that. In 2013, we moved to about 350. I think that's an important number for you to know, because for us, self-distributing, that was about the max in number that we could self-distribute to as an individual kind of unit without really investing a lot into distribution. So 350 stores in LA, 1 van, 1 driver, 1 person at home doing the routes and dealing with the road closings and managing the stores that were waiting for the delivery. That was about the operation it took to support 350 stores. Something important to note. And we really were thinking of investing in another van, but we hated distribution. We weren't good at it either. And so we sort of asked the question, like, do we really want to keep going down this route, or do we want to move to third-party distribution? And so it was that at the end of that year that we chose to do the third-party distribution route. So 350 no distributors jumped the next year to 2,000 stores with one distributor. So distributors definitely can help you grow. There's obviously a downside, and that downside is the cost. You know, you have to pay them to do that. But after doing it ourselves, we thought that was fair. And then the other downside I'd say is I think you expect them to do more than they do. So you still do need to support your product. It doesn't just show up and sell itself. So we went from 2,000 to 6,000 to 10,000. Today we're in 18,000 stores in every state. But we have 150 different distributors that take us all over the country. So again, for refrigerated, just like juice, that's a legit patchwork of people you got to work with, and companies you have to work with and manage, and people manage those companies, of course. We have over 20 employees that just manage those 150 distributors and make sure that they order and push them to order, and that you're doing promotions with them, and that you're riding with them. It requires a lot of support if you want to grow fast. Moving to number of employees, we started with 3 founders, and that was it for the first year. The second year, we were able to afford 1 employee. That employee ran production, and that was really important to hire somebody to run production. Of course, setting and holding all the standards that you set. But the only way you're going to be able to really grow your business and brand is if you get out of the kitchen. So that was a big lesson for us, because as soon as we hired him, it was like the business just grew because we were able to get into the helicopter and see where it needed to go. But one thing to note is the 3 of us alone couldn't support the growth we needed to just literally pay for our ramen noodles every day, which is what we were eating in the beginning 3 times a day. So we hired independent sales reps. And I share that with you because I think it's a really valuable tool to use in the beginning if you don't have a ton of cash, but you need to grow. So independent sales reps are commission-only salespeople. You can find them on Craigslist. That's what we did. But basically, you just set up a contract that every time they open an account, they get some kind of kicker, like some dollar amount. I think we paid $25. And then they get some percentage of the sales as they come in for X period that you define with them. And so the great thing about that is you don't really have to put up too much cash in order to get the growth. And they're only getting paid when you get paid, so it's kind of fair. But then the downside is generally these people are, part-time, they're doing other things, they leave you pretty often. The skill set and experience isn't high, so you're not getting a high quality level of work. And then just managing all of the time and geographies was a pain, but didn't cost a lot. So that was how we got from 7 to 350 stores in 3 months. And so that was pretty awesome. The following year, we started to invest because we got money into actual employees. So we had sales reps, and we had about 30 employees, then 60, then 100. And today we have 200 people both in and out of the brewery. And by the way, the 3 founders still operate the whole thing. So Justin, COO, Vanessa's CSO, she runs sales and distribution, and I'm CEO. And then moving on, I thought some other important things to note. We talked about capital. Capital is a big part. We've had to do 5 rounds of funding in 6 years. Almost every year. And the reason I bring that up is you don't have to grow as fast as we did, but if you want to grow as fast as we did, that's what it will take, because you're paying for basically a year ahead of your growth, always. So of course you're not getting those revenues for another year. So you always need to have that in mind when you think about the capital it'll take to grow. Another thing I thought I would share is that kombucha, similar to juice, is probably easier to sell in natural first, although I think juice now is kind of mainstream. Kombucha, when we started, was not. So our strategy was always to start in natural accounts and then expand into conventional accounts and then into mass. So it was only in the last 2 years that we got into Target, Walmart, Costco, 7-Eleven. But the beginning, it was Whole Foods, Erewhon, local mom pop shops, and I think that's exactly the right strategy. I think that's pretty much it for this slide. Sorry, I spent a lot of time there. Okay, so all of this effort and all of this time put us in a really strong spot. So we have a lot of number ones to be grateful for, not without hard work, but we're number 1 in percentage growth in the category, no matter what time period you look at. We're number one in absolute dollar growth across all channels, which is important because GT kombucha is actually 8 times bigger than us, but we're beating him in terms of the number of dollars we're growing by. So that's a big deal. We're driving about 80% of the growth in the category. And of all beverages in the country, we're top 25 in absolute dollar growth. So that's pretty cool to see ourselves there today. Yeah! And then this year we gained 7.8 points of market share, which is pretty nuts. So we cracked 10%. I think that means we're like a legit brand of kombucha now. Whew. All right, sweet. And so how did we get here? Okay, all this growth is really exciting, and I want you to have that too. So I thought I'd share the 3 main things I think our company has focused on to become the fastest growing brand in the category. And not in any order: people, the product, the liquid, and the brand. And I'll speak a little bit to each of these things. So first, the people. So you see Health-Ade on a shelf in the middle of Des Moines, and people are like, oh, that's so cool you're there. It's because you do it in the small batches. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's one piece of it, but it took so many hands to get it there. So many people had to work in unison in a concerted way to get it to that shelf in Des Moines. And the bigger that we get, the more I realize how important the people are to the success of the business. I'm clicking next, but thank you. So one of the most important things I think you have to do is define the values of your company. Now, it may not be important to do when you're 10 people or 15 people, because you as the founder, you are the culture already. And you can text all your employees in one text. So it doesn't have to be so professionalized, right? Because they just already know, they feel it, you bleed it every single day that you're talking to them. It was when we started hitting 25, 30, 40, 50 employees that it became really difficult to have control over the culture, because there's layers between you and the next person, or maybe they live 3,000 miles away. So luckily, we invested in this early. I have several sister or brother friends that are, were on the same track as us and didn't grow as fast because they didn't invest in the people part and the values part and in the culture. And it's much harder to come back from a bad culture than it is to start with a good one and maintain a good one. So I'm not here to sell you on what our values are. I think the important thing is that you create your own values, and it's got to be authentic and real, and please don't let it just be words on a page. That is like very corporate America. This is not the kind of values I'm talking about. So our values conveniently spell out goal. Said like the Spanish newscaster for soccer, go, that one. But that's how our culture is all about performance. We wouldn't be in existence if we didn't hit our goals. And then grit, optimism, authenticity, and leadership are the 4 drivers of that, of hitting our goals. So we hire based on this, we fire based on this, and we do semi-annual reviews based on this. Like, the values are a very big part of what we do. If you asked any of my employees what they were, they would be able to give you a no-blink response. And I think that's really key. So don't let that go too long. And then I think just taking care of your culture once you feel like you have a good one is really important. And there's 3 main ways I'd recommend doing that. First, hire right from the get-go. Just hire right from the get-go. The second, communicate a lot. The third, celebrate. So under hiring right, there's always that person that might be troublesome, but you hire them anyway. Because I don't know why, they're a little bit cheaper or you're really desperate. I think it's really important you hire from the beginning someone that you really feel good about. You're just gonna save yourself so many problems down the road. We've experienced so many problems with those people, and every time I'm like, I knew it from the beginning. So some ways that you can hire better is to institute something called a culture interview. This is something we do in-house. I recommend someone that's not the hiring manager. So if you're looking for this person, it's important it's not you. Have someone else do this interview. And that interview is not based on skill sets, experience. They don't even need to know what the job title is. what they're looking for is this person going to be a culture fit? So they ask questions that will basically evoke a response that will get the person to understand, is this person going to fit in here? So understanding your values first is an important piece to this, because that's what you're looking for. Does this person demonstrate grit, optimism, authenticity, leadership? Do they want to always hit their goals no matter what? That's the kind of person that does well at our company. And so it makes it really easy to catch someone who's a little bit pessimistic or a little bit negative when you're looking for it in the very beginning, and then you never even have to worry. So that's saved us. We instituted that about 2 years ago, and I think we've made almost no bad hires since then. So that's great. And then I recommend also investing in HR before it's too late. Communicating a lot with your employees is super important. I can't tell you how many founders I know that think their employees know what they're doing and why they're doing it, but they don't. And so communicating more often about what you're up to, what the business priorities are, how you're doing, what your biggest problems are, I think is super important to a good culture. So we do things like an annual kickoff meeting. We have all hands meetings every 6 weeks where no matter where you are in the company, everybody dials in or shows up live. And every department gives an update for how it's going since the last meeting 6 weeks ago. We have reviews twice a year and then weekly one-on-ones. Every employee meets with their manager every week for a scheduled meeting. It may sound crazy. A lot of people think I'm crazy when I ask for that in the very beginning. Managers say, I talk to my employees all the time. Like, I don't need to have a scheduled meeting. It's like, but to me, those are flyby meetings. You're only talking in flyby meetings about urgent things, fires. You're not talking about the stuff that's hard to talk about. And if an employee needs to talk about something, they're not going to do it in a flyby place. So if you have that scheduled meeting, I find it really avoids future issues. So little tidbit there. And then, of course, you have to celebrate. Our culture is pretty intense, the work is pretty intense at Health-Ade. People work really hard. So we got to take time to celebrate. We have a thing called Victory Week at the end of the year where everybody gets together live. We take care of them for a day and then take them out for dinner. And it's really important to take care of your employees. We also do quarterly goals and bonuses, which I think is the new way to incent people. No more annual bonus, if any of you are there yet. Cool. All right, so to the liquid piece, again, I'm not going to sell you on kombucha because you all are making juice, and I'm sure really amazing juice. But I think the important thing is that you know what differentiates you, and you know what makes you the best or better. For us, we were here to make the best tasting and highest quality kombucha you could buy. So we do all kinds of things, like ferment in 2.5-gallon jars. We do that to prevent plastic and metal leaching. There's no other commercial kombucha that uses glass in fermentation. We use super small 2.5-gallon jars. We use cold pressed juice to flavor our kombucha, and we make it entirely the natural way. Nothing added, nothing synthesized, nothing engineered. It's like you make it at home, just we find a way to move it around a little faster. So again, it's not about selling you on Health-Ade, it's more about selling you on standing for something and not compromising on that as you grow. So you can see here on the left, we've got 250,000 jars. Behind me, probably only a couple thousand, but they go 30 feet high. And we only figured that out because we were like, we are not going to compromise on that, even though every investor said, okay, so when are we going to move to stainless steel tanks? But I didn't move to stainless steel tanks because my experience was when the kombucha sits there for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, it will start to corrode that metal because kombucha is really acidic. So it's not a good thing for kombucha to sit in stainless steel, in my opinion. So it had to be oak or glass for us. And that's why we're there. And then you see me holding a bunch of jalapenos. I just do that normally, But I was doing that. We're trying to basically capture the point that we still use real produce, to flavor our kombucha, which is almost nobody does that anymore, even though you can still say jalapeno juice. Cool. So stand for something, I think, is the important thing under the liquid. And then last but not least, the brand. I think people wait to invest in the brand too long. The brand, I think, is one of the most important pieces, and you don't have to wait to invest in that. I think from its infancy, it's important to nurture that along with the rest of your company. So thinking about what your brand purpose is never too early. And I just have to say, if you think the answer to that, what's your brand purpose, is something rational or something factual about your product, I challenge you to think a little deeper on that. Nike, when they do their ads, is not thinking about sneakers. I mean, they're thinking about selling them, but they're not really trying to get you to think of sneakers when you see their ads. They're trying to get you inspired, right? Same thing with Apple. So if you want to be a brand like that, if you want to be understood like that, you have to think about the why, not the what. So for example, in the beginning, I thought Health-Ade was here to be the best tasting and highest quality kombucha you could buy. But then somebody asked me, well, what if somebody just started making kombucha in glass jars and flavored it just like you? And I was like, I don't know. Hair loss company, we could start that. No, but it really got me thinking, like, that is not a good place to be. You want to have a strong brand, one that people will follow no matter what. They'll see your bottle and drive 50, or they'll see that you're for sale 50 miles away and drive that just to buy it. So anyway, thinking about why you're there is really important. It's not the same as what you are. So we did a lot of marinating on this. For us, our tagline, follow your gut, is really important to us. It was something we came up with sort of on accident at that table 2 weeks before our first farmer's market. And I think at the time we thought, oh, cute, follow your gut, probiotics. You know, we trademarked it, thank God. But to this day, it has been one of the most important things we have because it has been our business mantra. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. We still don't know what we're doing. And it's always been about following our instincts to figure out the next step. And if we could inspire that in others to realize that they have everything they need to go out there and get whatever they want, that would be an amazing message and mark to leave. So that's what we want to do. We want people to be inspired to follow their guts, to realize they've got it inside. So we did something called brand architecture work. I highly recommend it. You pay somewhere around 20 grand to do it. I know that sounds like a lot, and it may not be the right time to do it for your business, but it was after doing this brand architecture work that we really understood how we could start messaging to consumers, how we could start inspiring consumers about follow your gut, not just about being the best kombucha. So when it is time for your business, I highly recommend doing it. All kinds of consultants and marketing and creative agencies will do this for you. It's just called brand architecture work. And from that, we were able to understand our core belief, our purpose, our tagline, and even our values. And I think I'm almost done, and I want to answer any questions you guys have because I think it's more useful for me to answer your questions than for me to just talk up here. But I thought it would be really cool to share with you our manifesto video because it was out of that video. It was out of our brand architecture work that we were able to come up with that video. And I think that video really captures what I'm trying to do with our brand, not just with our product. Cool? All right, so can you play the video?
It's not a means to an end. It's a means to a beginning of feeling good, living better, being more healthy. How healthy? Well, that's entirely up to you. You see, we want you to be healthy, but to the point of happy. No more, no less, no rules. For some, this could get pretty scientific and technical. That's cool. We can go there. For the rest of us, for the most of us, it's about feeling great. Or maybe just better. It's up to you.
I love you so, 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 so much.
And that's the exact amount of kombucha you need. How do you know when you've gotten there, achieved it, attained that? You'll know. Just follow your gut. We think it's got a pretty good head on its shoulders.
So thank you guys so much for hearing a little bit about our story, my story, and hopefully what I shared with you is valuable today to you. If not, or if you have further questions or clarification, please, I'm here for Q&A. And just thank you so much to Little West and Goodnature for having me. And also, I want to say that Carlos and Adrian have been critical for us scaling in the manufacturing side. So highly recommend using those guys as consultants. So cool. Thank you so much. I'm up for questions. Is that right? Questions? Cool. Yeah.
And I was kind of curious, like, what percentage you would give them, and if you would, obviously, you were training them to go into these places, and if you told them to give samples, or mostly percentage of what they got and samples.
Yep. So we gave them, in the very beginning, we gave them $25 for opening a store, and they would get that when the store put in their first order, and then 10% of the sales that came in for 6 months. So it sounds like a lot, but we were happy to give it because those sales continued. And if you do that period too short, like let's say you only did 3 months, because I think we did try 3 months for a few individuals. The stores require management in the beginning. They just forget about you. They forget about putting you on the shelf. You really just can't show up and then be gone. So you do want that person to keep nurturing that account. Pretty much even after 6 months, but that was the contract we set up. Cold calling. We would basically put ISRs into a region, like wherever they lived, West Hollywood, and yeah, cold calling. Do they have product? Yeah, so we would give them, they would come into the brewery and get a bunch of product for the week and then store it in their fridge at home. But in the beginning that was allowable until they're like, I have no room for my food. And then I'm like, God, I have to buy you a fridge now. So, there's challenges with it, but that's how it worked in the beginning. Yes.
So my question is more along the lines of can you hold on for 1 second? Give you a mic.
Here.
So my question is more for the kombucha itself, because my husband and I, we have so many scobies at home in these glass bottles with the same little cheesecloth and the rubber band. And what we were running into, of course, we had to educate our consumers because they were just really unfamiliar with it. But we kind of like a stronger brew of kombucha, and the feedback that we had been getting was that it was just too strong. So for your brewing, like, what is your typical time for brewing your batches?
We do about a week and change in primary, and then depending on the juice that's added, secondary can be anywhere from 1 day for beet juice to 14 days for no juice, which is our original. So it's 3 full weeks, but only a week and a half with the SCOBY. Cool. Yes.
So at this point, all that's been done with your brand. What is your end game now? And does it always change, or does it closely mirror what was in your mind after you realized scobies weren't the thing?
I keep wondering if we're gonna start our hair loss company. That would be a cool full circle moment. It's a good question. I don't know that I know what my end game is, but it does change. Like what I want changes. I will say that getting investment from like private equity or venture capital, definitely think about that, because it will change they want their money back in 5 to 7 years. So think about what that means for your business. For us, it means fast growth at all costs, growth. So their end game would be to sell to a strategic. Now, is that my end game? Maybe, provided that strategic isn't going to make me compromise on the things I don't want to compromise on, and then provided that strategic would help me grow in the ways that they could help me grow in. So I think with the right fit, it could be a place that we go, but I'm not like seeking for that as a necessary thing. Right now, my thing I'm focused on is becoming profitable next year, because I think it's freaking time. And I don't want to be reliant on that money always needing to go back into the well. And they're happy for us to go back into the well. That's the other thing. So right now, that's my initial thing. I want to see kombucha Health-Ade everywhere in America in every fridge. That's for sure one of my end games. But I also want to be happy and do it at the right for the right reasons. Yeah. Yes, Andrew.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Daina. I think something that a lot of people struggle with, something that we've definitely struggled with, was deciding when we need to do a raise. How far in advance do you say, okay, well, my business isn't there now, but will it be there in 6 months? Do I need to do a raise now? Do I need to build a deck now? Do I need to, like, what are the things that I need to do in order to, to go after a raise? And, I say this, it's a question for everybody too, but we've gone through a raise, but man, we pressed the panic button at the when we needed that money to come through, it came through the next day. And then, then you find yourself back in that rhythm again, We always focus, all of our attention is growth and our business and our product and our relationships. And then all of a sudden we forget that we have to raise money. All of a sudden you're like, you run out of capital. And then, you have days, because you have to, we go into production every, couple weeks on a massive batch of juice, and all of a sudden we go, oh my God, we don't have the money necessarily to, make the juice. So.
The capital is the biggest challenge of all the challenges. I totally feel you. And I don't know that I have a great answer for you, because I don't think there is one way to do it. But you're absolutely right that capital, it's like air. You don't live to breathe, but you can't live without it, right? So the company just cannot exist without capital. It's the reality of business. The more you become comfortable with the fact that you need to be making money, the better you'll be in business to help the world, if that's ultimately your purpose, which would be great. So don't be afraid of making money. But yeah, I mean, the thing about, so capital raises will take anywhere from 3 months to a year. It's a really big range. It depends if you're new to the raise, like you don't have any people, you're starting out, it's probably going to take longer, like on the longer side of that range. But if you already have investors, you might be able to get money turned around in 3 months. So for you guys that have already done a raise, you probably would want to plan out, 3 months plus some for a buffer. But for those of you going into it early, start thinking about it early on. And then on the flip side, I would be like, hold out to raise money as long as you can. Because as soon as you do that, a piece of your ownership goes away. And of course, it's not going to be valued at the amount you value it at. So you just try to push that out as much as possible is the other piece of advice I'd give. For us, that wasn't available. We didn't have any assets. We had very little cash. And we weren't able to grow this thing even at all from the farmers markets without capital. So we got investment very early on, and that's been our story. But just remember where I sit today, we're owned by private equity. That doesn't mean that I don't run the business and make the decisions. Just I don't own as much as they do. So it's an important thing to think about for the end game. I don't know if that answers your question. There's really no right answer to that. But it is more difficult than you think. I will just say one other thing. Capital, getting capital from investors, what was I going to say? They want a return in 5 to 7 years, and then they also like to wait until you need it. They will not be like, hey, guys, I think it's time for another raise. So they like for you to be uncomfortable because, of course, that puts you in a spot of weakness in a negotiation. So just be very careful about that. You have to go, they're not your partners. They're not your friends in those moments. Okay.
Hey, so y'all started 2013?
Yeah, in the stores, 2013.
Okay. When did you decide and when did y'all make the decision to do the brand architecture?
2015, beginning of 2015, we did our first brand architecture work.
Okay, do you feel like that was the right time, or would you have done it sooner, or was that just
No, I think that's the right time.
Cool.
The only thing I would have done differently in the business is invested in finance earlier.
Fair. Thank you.
Just as an example, I remember not wanting to hire a purchaser. I'm like, a purchaser? Why do we need a purchaser? Can't somebody just purchase the items? I don't understand. That's what we've been doing. It's tea, water, and sugar. Then we hired a purchaser, and in 30 days, she saved us $60,000. And I was like, that's why you hire a purchaser. Got it. Okay. So things like that. Wow. You'd be surprised. They really, all my finance people have paid for themselves within 2 months of working for us. Yes. With Haley? Yes, please do. That's why you do. Yes.
So you guys have a lot of very interesting and unique flavors. I wanted to know what your process is for new product development.
It's not very sophisticated. It's pretty much like, well, this year we tried to elevate it a bit. So before this year, it was pretty much like, I like chocolate. Let's try chocolate kombucha. And then somebody in the brewery puts together a bunch of different things and we approve one. It's really not sophisticated. We just want it to taste good, be really good ingredients. And then one of the founders inspires it usually. Or our chief brewer, Ramon, would also be an instigator of that. This year, what was interesting is as the business has evolved, like we're not cold calling account to account anymore. Now a lot of our account calls are actually like at the global level. So we'll meet with like the head buyer of Walmart and you get to meet with him once a year. So you want to show up to that meeting with things to offer. Because if you're just showing up with tangerine kombucha and he doesn't like tangerines, you're not getting a new SKU. So that's the reality, though. Like those buyers make so many decisions for consumers. It's crazy, especially in refrigerated, because they are not your consumer. I'll just say that. So you want to come in with like 12 options for them because they're going to be more likely to pick one or two or three if you have more options. So this year, we decided to get 20 in the queue so that we could show up with a lot of options. And still the same thing, though. I was like, I like tangerines and strawberries and that, so sorry I don't have a good answer for that one. I think it could be better. I bet you a lot of companies do it better than us. I bet you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
So you said you cold called grocery stores at the beginning with sales reps or independent consultants, whatever. What is the steps of doing that? We're just getting to that.
Yeah.
And I know HACCP rules,
Mm-hmm.
business. That's about all I know. But how do you get into it?
So when you said grocery, I wanted to clarify. In the very beginning, when we were knocking on people's doors, it wasn't like the grocery store. It was like small mom pop type of shops. Like, for us at the beginning, it was high-end stores because our kombucha was like $8 a bottle in the beginning. So it was, literally showing up, asking where the manager was, having a 6-pack with us, talking to them about it, coming back if they weren't there, and then them saying, okay, yeah, we'll carry it. And it's those stores that are willing to deal with your self-distribution issues. And I think at the grocery level, like even the Air One level, and Air One now is much bigger than it was then. Then Air One was just 2 stores. So even that was a really big deal. Like we couldn't go into Air One until we were properly ready. And the orders from Air One was like just 2 vans. So we would have to go to Air One twice every week just to deliver the product they needed. So even to be able to meet the demands of grocery, we had to be there. But that didn't go too differently, except instead of knocking, you would just come in and try to find the manager and try to get a meeting. And they would there's usually a few people between you and the manager, like they don't easily let it happen. So tip, you go right before the store opens or right as the store opens. They're almost always there. The buyer's almost always there because they do their buying usually 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. They're always gone by 3. So don't go in the afternoon. And then you just got to be persistent. I mean, our first grocery account was Gelson's. And I showed up at the guy's office every day with a coffee. Every day with a coffee. And he was like, no. And I was like, I'll be back tomorrow. And I did. And eventually, I think out of pity, he accepted 1 SKU. And then when we got in, we were like, we are not going to let this fail because we've got to now prove that he's got to take 2 SKUs. So we were doing demos there all the time. And the cool thing about these stores is they want small business to win. They really do when you get these relationships going. So, even though they've got some kind of process for demos or something like that, just ask, oh, we're so small, can we do a demo today? Nobody's here. Yeah, sure. So there's all this stuff you can do in the beginning as a small brand that as a bigger brand, they just don't let you do anymore. Take advantage of it.
Hello,
Yes.
quick questions. First of all, great job. It really was
thanks.
awesome. You did a great job. Did the scobies work on the hair?
I don't know.
Oh, you never did it?
I never tried it.
Oh, I was just wondering.
We never
But
ended up trying it. Isn't that nuts?
Oh, you should. All right.
Gosh.
And then what's
Maybe a
your
really strong kombucha has really strong scobies that could work. Because take the idea.
what's your 3 best sellers?
Pink lady apple, ginger lemon, and pomegranate. But that's a bit self-fulfilling. Like, because when Trader Joe's is like, we want your 2 top sellers, that only becomes even more of a top seller. So like Pink Lady Apple and Ginger Lemon are so far at the top, but it's not like the other guys have had an equal opportunity. You know what I'm saying? So I still think some of those guys below, skew for skew. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, we'll talk after. I got a whole, yeah. Pink Lady Apple, Ginger Lemon, Pomegranate. We'll start there. They're great sellers. Yeah. And the holiday cheers. That's only available for a couple months.
Oh, the grape. Oh, the grape is so
The grape is good. It's the champagne of kombucha. Yeah. Yes.
So when you first started, is it safe to say that your goal was to always be to be retailed in grocery stores since you wanted to be everywhere? Was that always your goal?
Yeah. Our goal in the beginning was to be everywhere. So it was like whoever would take us. But we were smart about knowing that natural would be smarter to do first. Like actually Costco wanted us 2 years ago, Costco SoCal, because I don't know, we just met up at a trade show and he really liked our brand, the buyer there. But we said no because like we weren't ready for that yet. Not just from a production standpoint of the volumes of Costco, but more the reason we said no was it just felt wrong to be in Costco before we were in Ralph's and Vons. Like we wanted to do that first. So I think it's important to like know where your consumer is as you grow. Yeah, for us it was natural, then expanded to conventional, then mass. Yes.
Thank you. Given the importance that is for you to keep producing the kombucha the way that you did it in your kitchen, how do you see yourself fighting against technology and competition and not having to revisit the fact that you may have to switch to stainless steel?
I don't think we'll have to switch to stainless steel. Like, so people like Carlos and Adrian can help you build plans for your manufacturing based on what your standards are and help you understand what is scalable and what isn't. So it wasn't so much the glass itself that wasn't scalable. It was how we're moving these things around. In the beginning, it was a person by hand putting it up on a shelf, taking it down off the shelf, moving it around. That's not really scalable because, well, injuries start to happen. It's not very efficient. Your kombucha is going to cost too much. So there's a challenge. You can say that the glass is the crux of that problem, but really the crux of the problem is how it's being moved around, not the glass itself. So we figured out how to move that glass around in such a way that it's not inefficient. But yeah, I mean, I'm never going to be as cheap as the kombuchas that engineer it. Lucky for us, the consumer is starting to care about how kombucha and food is made. So it's a great marketing asset for us to be able to take that jar with us wherever we go. And, you know, you look at my website, you'll see pictures of how we brew it. You won't see that with any of the other kombucha makers. So we're trying to use that as an advantage now, but I really don't think you have to compromise on the things you don't want to compromise on. Technology is your friend, though. So, like, we're installing a brand new filling line now that's got robots. So that's cool. That doesn't, you know, the kombucha knows no different. It's just palletizing the cases for us. So I think technology is a good thing when you have the capital to invest in it, but I would definitely not compromise on what you don't want to. Period. Yeah.
Okay, we've got time for one more question here.
Okay.
Why do you feel like in the kombucha industry it is so private? Like, it's not. I mean, most people who brew at home like know the process and they talk to other people within the community. But like outside of it, if you want to start a brewing company with kombucha, like I feel like it's really hush hush.
You're totally right about that. I don't know. I think there's two reasons. I think the first is the recipe may be easy to find online, but there are so many things you have to learn about learning how to manufacture kombucha. I mean, just so many things, because it's such a live product that ferments. And so as you scale it and ship it to New York, I mean, the amount of lessons I've had to learn about shipping the product to New York, that I feel like I carry them as like war scars, or like battle wounds. And it's just like well, I think it's not shared because it is such a competitive marketplace. And you go to these store accounts and they're like, we're going to take one. They'll put you next to each other and say, we're going to take one of you, sell me. So you're not exactly, I think ideally you're in a situation where you say, you pick the one you like best. We're friends, right? But the reality is it's business, and sometimes people get sharky. I will say that Health-Ade really isn't like that. Like, we're the first to be like, come see our brewery. I mean, we don't actually have a permit for brewery tours, but I do about 2 tours a week, especially for like press and influencers, because I want them to show people how we make it. And then I mentor fellow kombucha company owners every week. But I think the second reason, so the first I think is it's just business, and it is competitive out there, and the stores are like, we got room for one spot, just like these guys. See, and just like that, we're gonna take over GT, and he's not happy about it, So that's reality. But the second thing is, I think people aren't making it the way you make it at home, and they don't want to show you that.
I guess, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? Why wouldn't then you show it? Yeah.
All right, let's give it up for Daina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.